video I'm going to show you some of the seeds I'm harvesting in July, how to know when the seed is ready and how to store them for use later. Some of the seeds I'll be collecting in this video are honeywort, cerinthe, honesty, columbine, foxglove, delphinium, cornflower, knapweed, allium and valerian, and that's simply because those are ready in my garden. First, let me show you some of the seeds I have collected in the past. So this is my seed collection sort of pile. I have so many seeds that really I don't ever need to buy any seeds again. As long as I keep these going and collecting the seeds each year, I could literally fill this garden 3 times over with these seeds alone. By collecting your own seeds, you don't just save money, you actually really optimise your chances of gardening success. Not every seed is viable, not even the ones you buy in the shops can guarantee germination, which is why plants produce so many seeds in the first place. By sowing more seeds than you need, you don't have to be constantly demoralised when they don't all survive. You will still have more than enough that do. I often lose about half of what I sow, depending on the plant of course, but I don't really care because I just know how my life is. I'm not always there to water. Sometimes I forget, sometimes the slugs get them or other factors. I've put them in a place that isn't the best for them and then I've forgotten and I lose them. But because I have so many, I can just afford to lose them anyway. So I save my seeds in these white paper envelopes simply because I have so many left over from when I used to sell greeting cards in another life. Any paper will do though, or a glass jar is also very good. You can, I have saved seeds in plastic bags before and they do seem to be okay, but that's because overall I store all my seeds in a cool, dry part of my outbuilding. So they do seem to be okay even in plastic, but I don't generally choose plastic. I either choose a jar if I have absolutely loads of seeds. For instance, my sweet peas will easily fill up a jar, and my calendula did last year, and this jar is nearly empty, but that's because I have re-sowed them. But generally I will just use these envelopes because I have them, not because they're special or anything like that. So use what you have. While I'm collecting some of my seeds that are ripe in the garden, I'll also show you what to look out for to know that your seed is ripe and ready for collection, harvesting. So number one of the first signs your seeds are ready to collect is that the plant itself looks kind of dead. So let's start here with this columbine, which flowered much earlier than the others, so has had much more time to ripen. Many of these seeds have already been dispersed by the wind or insects, etc. So as you can see, the pod is very dry and a tan colour. And it's also often the case with many of these seeds that you can hear the seeds rattle inside, which is a good clue that they are nice and dry and separate and ready to be collected. When they're not ready, they will not rattle. They're kind of still young and wet and glued together. Other seeds that rattle are poppies, but in my garden they're not ripe yet. I will just quickly show you an example of these that aren't ripe, which is one I just harvested for the purpose of this video, and then one in a previous video I did where it was ripe, and you can clearly see the difference there. Another sign a seed is ready for collection is that the pod is open and showing you the seeds inside. As you can see with these alliums, the pod is slightly split, it's slightly cracked, like a chick trying to break out of an egg. That is a good sign that a seed is ripe for collection. In fact, it is the seed is ripe for collection if this is the case. Another thing you need to think about when collecting the seed is that they don't all ripen at the same time. So if you take this Sweet William dianthus here, the flowers on the flower head don't all flower at the same time. They look like they are, but actually if you look closely, they're not. They open at separate rates. So the outside ones flower first and then the inside ones flower later, which gives this kind of like feeling as though the flower is flowering for a long time, but actually they're all the separate flowers on the head. Now that obviously means then that the seeds ripen at different times. So not every seed on this head will be ripe at the same time. So depending on how many Sweet William plants you have, you may want to either harvest the whole head and then just shake out what you can, and just basically sacrifice the ones that aren't ready. But if you don't have a lot of dianthus in your garden, you may want to just pick them off, the little pods off separately as and when they ripen. So say for instance you only have 2 plants in your garden, and this is the first time you're harvesting the seed. To maximise the amount of seeds you're going to get off each plant, you can just pick off each pod as it's open. As soon as you can see those seeds inside, you can pick the pod out. If you have a lot of plants like me, you can just pick the whole head and turn it upside down, and as I said, sacrifice the ones that aren't ripe. But what I tend to do is a bit of a combination of both those things. When I don't have time, I will just pick the head and do that. Same with my sweet peas, my verbascum. Sometimes I just chuck the whole stem with the seed pods into a bag. But when I do have some time, or just want to do something relaxing and therapeutic, I'll grab a coffee and I would just manually pick all the seeds out, you know, out of each individual pot. And there's a great deal of satisfaction doing that. So as you can tell with the Sweet William, the ones that are ripe are open, the ones that aren't ripe are not open and tend to be more green. And that's the same with the foxglove, because you have with the foxglove all the pods going up the stem at various stages of ripeness, if that's a word. And here you can see again the seed is open, and you can see how many seeds there are inside this pod alone. Now with these, once they're open at this stage, you do need to just go and harvest them because the wind knocking these stems about will just disperse the seeds before you have a chance to collect them. So it's a good idea to tool your garden daily if you can, if not weekly. Should give you enough of a harvest. Another issue when you're collecting seeds like these, very tiny seeds, is that any kind of vibration can easily disperse the seeds. So make sure when you pick them very carefully, you do it very gently and you don't let the stem ping backwards and forwards, otherwise you will just lose all the seeds. If you do a little bit daily, you can amass an awful lot of seeds without it really feeling like much work at all. So some seeds are not that obvious, and so these valerian seeds, for instance, seem to just be fluff and are airborne very quickly. Now valerian is a good self-seeder anyway, so it's not necessary to collect the seeds unless you want to grow some for friends or for profit, or just have more control and establish them in another part of the garden. Then you would need to collect the seeds, and as you can see, they are just tiny grains amongst the fluff, so you do have to sort of work a little bit harder to get these seeds. Similarly, cornflower seeds are not that obvious. They're kind of inside the ball here. Once cracked open, these balled seed heads are full of fluff, and at first it seems like there aren't any seeds inside, but they are there amongst the fluff. Again, they're kind of airborne. They look like little shuttlecocks, those little badminton shuttlecocks, and once you know what they look like, then they're easier to harvest. Another one that's very similar to the cornflower is the greater knapweed seeds. They're just slightly bigger, but they look almost exactly the same, and once again they are inside that ball that's beneath the flower head, if you like. Once you start collecting your seeds, you'll start to recognize similarities in seeds and types of seeds. So delphinium and columbine are very similar in terms of the shape of the pod and the seeds. The only real difference being is that the delphinium pod and seed is bigger than the columbine pod and seed. You can also see similarities between cornflower and greater knapweed, as I already mentioned, and also foxglove and snapdragons. Again, the foxglove, the snapdragons, they produce loads and loads of those tiny little full stop side seeds all the way up the stem in those little pods, and they disperse very easily if you're not careful when you collect them, but they're very satisfying to collect because when you turn them upside down, they just pour out in huge quantities. There are other seeds such as honeywort which are face down, so any movement in these plants causes them to lose their kind of heavy ripe seeds. So a bit more care has to be taken when harvesting those because they will just drop onto the floor before you have a chance. One of the best ways to avoid losing those seeds is to actually just shake the flower head into a bag rather than cut them off and move them like I did, because you know, I knew as I was cutting them that the ripest seeds were just dropping out the flower heads into the ground. So the best thing is to just harvest those in situ. Now I will be collecting seeds right through autumn and winter, so may do more of these videos depending on the interest in them. But there's just one more tip before I go. Some seeds such as strawflowers, nigella, scabious, sweet peas, etc., they will continue to ripen in a vase after the flower heads have died. So if someone gives you a vase of flowers and you keep them hydrated, they will continue to ripen their seed pods after the flowers have died. But they must be kept in water. They mustn't be treated as a dead flower. I mean, if you remove their source of water, they will actually just die before the seed head has developed and ripened. And not all flowers will ripen. I pretty much doubt most commercially grown flowers would continue to ripen in the vase. But if you have a locally grown flower, or someone has cut you and gifted you some from their garden, there is a good chance that some of them will in fact ripen right through to seeds. So you'll be able to get some nice free seeds from the bouquet that you were given. I mean, there's a tendency when you're given flowers if you're going to do anything with them, is to dry them, to preserve them. But if you actually keep them in water, some of them may well just produce some seeds. Just one more tip before I go actually is many of these seeds that ripen now are ready to sow now for next year. If they're a hardy annual, what you call a cool flower over there in the States, or a hardy perennial, then you can sow them now, overwinter them, and they will be flowering this time next year. All right, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you again in my next video. Bye.